84% of people still think men and women can be just friends. Only 6% disagree. And yet that 6% runs the entire comment section every time this topic comes up. So which one's actually right? That's what we're doing today. We're going to walk through what the data actually says happens inside a cross-sex friendship, from the moment it starts to the moment it gets tested by something real. And by the end, you'll know exactly which parts of the "they can't really be friends" argument are true, which parts are wrong, and which parts are asking the wrong question entirely. But before we get into whether the claim is true, it's worth asking why it's so sticky in the first place. Because it's not a new idea. People have been suspicious of opposite-sex friendship for basically as long as it's existed as a normal, everyday thing. And that's actually recent. Go back 100 years, and unmarried men and women socializing one-on-one, unsupervised, wasn't really a category that existed for most people. Cross-sex friendship as we know it, hanging out, texting, grabbing food, no romantic intention on either side, is a pretty modern arrangement, which means the suspicion isn't some ancient wisdom passed down through generations. It's a newer idea trying to catch up to a newer behavior, and it hasn't fully caught up yet. Here's how normal it actually is now though. Psychologist April Bleske-Rechek ran a survey of college students asking a simple question: do you have a friend of the opposite sex? Almost everyone said yes, not most people. Almost all of them. That 84% number from the top of the video isn't a fluke either. It shows up whether you ask college kids or the general public, which tells you the suspicion isn't coming from lived experience. Almost nobody's actual friendship is the problem. It's coming from somewhere else. So the claim we're testing today isn't a majority position. It's a minority position that happens to be extremely confident and extremely online, which makes it worth taking seriously, because loud minorities are sometimes the ones who notice something real first. Now, here's where I have to be honest with you, because there's a version of this video where I just tell you the haters are wrong and we all feel good for 8 minutes, but that's not what the data supports. Let's start with the accusation aimed at men, because it holds up better than most people expect. Bleske-Rechek brought in actual established friend pairs, a man and a woman who already knew each other, and split them into separate rooms. Each one answered privately, anonymously, how attracted they were to their friend. Neither could see what the other wrote. No pressure to perform a good answer for anyone. And guess what? On average, men reported more attraction than women did, consistently. It didn't matter whether the guy was single or in a relationship. Didn't matter whether his friend was single or taken. The gap just sat there, quietly, underneath friendships that both people would describe out loud as completely platonic. But it gets more specific. Men were also more likely to believe their friend was attracted to them back, even in cases where she genuinely wasn't. So it's not just that men report wanting more. On average, a meaningful chunk of them are also misreading the whole situation, walking around convinced the feeling is mutual when the data says, flatly, it usually isn't. There's a Norwegian study that explains why this keeps happening across totally different samples, and the answer is almost embarrassingly simple. Men and women are reading completely different signals off the exact same behavior. A woman being warm and attentive gets read by a lot of men as flirting. A man being flirty and attentive gets read by a lot of women as just being a nice, normal friend. Same interaction, word for word. Two different translations happening in two different heads. And neither person realizes there's a translation problem at all. So when someone jokes that there's no such thing as a guy who's just friends with a woman he finds attractive, that's not pure cynicism talking. That's a real, measurable pattern with a name, a sample size, and a whole country's worth of confused men behind it. Now flip it, because the accusation aimed at women holds up too, and pretending otherwise would just be picking a side instead of following the research. There's a body of work led by evolutionary psychologist David Buss and his colleagues, running back over 2 decades now, looking at what men and women actually say they want out of an opposite-sex friend. Women, more than men, reported valuing things like gifts, paid nights out, and physical protection from a male friend. Not as an occasional bonus, this showed up consistently, over and over, in what they said they genuinely wanted. And here's the uncomfortable overlap. What women said they wanted from a male friend lined up closely with what women said they wanted from a boyfriend. Not identical, but close enough that the researchers themselves flagged it in their own write-up. So no, that part of the internet argument isn't invented out of thin air either. There's a real measured pattern sitting sitting under it. Same as the one on the men's side. Two accusations, two real patterns behind them. If the video ended right here, the cynics would win, and honestly, that's usually where this conversation stops online, because outrage doesn't need a second act. Ours does. Both of those patterns are about impulses and preferences. Neither one is actually a measurement of whether the friendship itself is real, and that's the part the comment section always skips past on its way to the punchline. Because wanting something out of a friendship doesn't automatically make it fake. Every friendship gives you something. Your best guy friend gives you someone to split a pizza with on a random Tuesday. Nobody calls him a pizza splitting resource instead of a friend. We just don't usually say out loud what a friendship provides, so the moment someone finally names it, it sounds like a scandal instead of what it actually is, just how relationships work. And that's actually the bigger pattern behind all of this. Attraction, in a friendship or anywhere else, is rarely about looks in a vacuum. It's about whether you look like you've got your life together. That's been the biggest shift for me lately. And look, you can call me shady for telling you this now, but then I wouldn't want you to keep making the same mistakes I made and still struggling to figure out what's even going on in the first place. So go grab the truth detector from the description, because all these I've packaged in that book so you don't have to miss a damn thing again. So the two accusations are both partly true, which means the real question isn't whether attraction and self-interest exist inside these friendships. Obviously they do. The real question is whether that's actually enough to disqualify something from being real friendship at all. And that's where the data gets a lot more interesting. Here's what almost nobody brings up when they're arguing about this in the comment section at midnight. Attraction existing inside a friendship and attraction ruining that friendship are two completely different things, but people treat them like the same fact. They're not. In Bleske-Rechek's research, when people were asked to describe the attraction in their cross-sex friendship as either a benefit or a cost, most called it a cost. Not something they were secretly enjoying, something they actively managed week after week, so the actual friendship could keep functioning underneath it. Think about what that actually means. It means most people in these friendships noticed the exact thing everyone online assumes they're too oblivious to notice and chose the friendship anyway, on purpose, repeatedly. That's not two people blindly stumbling into a disguised something else. That's two people making a decision over and over that most of us never find out they had to make at all. There's a study that asked people to describe, in their own words, what their opposite sex best friend actually was to them, not a checkbox, their own language. Women most commonly reached for something closer to sibling, brother-like. Men asked the identical question, mostly just said friend, no elaboration, different words for the same relationship, and both of those descriptions were tied to the highest satisfaction scores recorded in the study. Neither side needed to define it the same way for it to actually work. There's a separate finding here that might be the most useful thing in this whole video for the men watching. Researchers found that men rated the emotional intimacy in their cross-sex friendships as high as the intimacy in their friendships with other men. Same level, no drop off. Ask a guy what he actually tells his male friends during a hard week and you'll usually get a shrug. Ask what he tells his closest female friend and the list gets longer, fast. If that's true for you, you're not broken and you're not unusual. You're sitting inside a documented common pattern. A lot of male friendships just don't leave room for that kind of talk, so the opposite sex friendship ends up carrying weight that, honestly, it probably shouldn't have to carry alone. That's worth sitting with for a second, because it flips the usual framing of this whole debate. The stereotype says men keep female friends around for one reason. The data says a lot of men are actually keeping them around because it's the one place they get to be fully honest about anything at all. So here's where the "she's just using him for benefits" framing runs into a real problem. Researchers looked at something called coalitional mate retention. In plain terms, when your relationship is at risk, do you lean on a friend to help run interference for you, cover for you, vouch for you? The finding was that leaning on a friend this way was tied to a higher quality friendship, specifically when that friend was a woman. Didn't matter if it was one woman helping another woman or a woman helping a man. Higher quality, both directions. But when a man leaned on another man for that exact same kind of support, the friendship quality went down instead. Same study, same method, but opposite result. Sit with that for a second, because it quietly undoes the whole "she's using him" argument. Women's friendships, including their friendships with men, function like actual alliances. That's not one woman quietly extracting value from a guy who doesn't realize what's happening. That's just the shape her friendships take across the board with her sister, her closest friend from college, and every man she trusts enough to bring inside that circle. It has nothing to do with exploitation. It's how her trust is structured, and being inside it is closer to an honor than a con. It also explains something that trips people up when they first hear the women want resources and protection research from earlier. That's not a woman treating a friend like an ATM with jumper cables. It's the same underlying wiring that makes her a fiercely loyal friend to the women in her life too. The male friend isn't a special exception carved out for extraction. He's just been let into a system that already runs on genuine loyalty, and that's a very different story than the cynical one. Everything so far has been about casual cross-sex friendship. No boyfriend or girlfriend anywhere in the frame, nobody's future on the line. Under those conditions, the data is pretty clearly on the side of, yes, this is real friendship. But that's not actually the situation most people online are arguing about. They're arguing about what happens once someone in that friendship is already committed to somebody else. That's a completely different question, and it's the one the research actually gets interesting on. There's a study that tracked attitudes toward a partner's opposite sex best friend across different relationship stages. Dating couples were relatively relaxed about it. Married couples, further down the line, were relatively relaxed too. But engaged couples, the ones counting down to a wedding, had the most negative attitudes toward a partner's opposite sex best friend out of every group in the entire study, which is almost backwards from what you'd expect walking in. You'd think the closer you get to forever, the safer everyone would feel. Instead, the closer the commitment gets, the sharper the suspicion gets right alongside it. There's a study on married couples specifically that found wives were more jealous than husbands about a spouse's opposite sex platonic friend, and more worried about it turning physical than emotional. That flips the stereotype most people are walking around with, that women fear an emotional bond stealing their partner and men fear a physical one. The data says it often runs the other way, but the finding that actually explains the tension best came from a different study entirely, and it's the one worth remembering. Researchers gave people a hypothetical: your partner has a close friend. Then they changed exactly one thing: same closeness, same length of friendship, identical description in every other respect, except sometimes that friend was described as the same sex, sometimes the opposite sex. That one detail on its own, with nothing else different, was enough to spike how threatened people said they felt. But nothing happened in that hypothetical. No late night text, no secret meetup, no lie ever caught. Just the label opposite sex friend sitting alone in a made up sentence moved the needle on trust by itself, which means the anxiety a lot of people feel about their partner's opposite sex friend usually isn't coming from anything the friend actually did. It's coming from the category itself, learned from decades of movies, breakup stories, and comment sections that all repeat the same logic, that the sex thing always gets in the way eventually, no matter what either person intends. The fear was installed before the friendship ever had a chance to prove anything either way. So here's the actual answer, and it might not fully satisfy either side of the comment section. A casual, low stakes, no romantic partner involved cross-sex friendship holds up. The attraction, where it exists, gets managed instead of acted on. The benefits run in both directions. The intimacy is often genuinely mutual. Every piece of research we've walked through says that's a normal, functioning friendship, not a disguised something else waiting to happen. The tension people are actually pointing at, the jealousy, the suspicion, the is he coming too, is a separate, well-documented reaction that shows up anytime someone with something to lose finds out their partner has a close friend of the opposite sex. It fires whether or not there's a single real thing to be afraid of. The friendship doesn't have to do anything wrong. The label alone is enough to trigger the fear before any evidence ever shows up. Two questions have been getting argued as if they're one this whole time. Can men and women be just friends is a question about the friendship itself, and the research says usually yes. Can the people standing next to that friendship handle knowing it exists is a completely different question about trust, commitment, and fear, and it doesn't have the same answer. We spent time testing whether cross-sex friendship holds up on its own terms, and it mostly does. Attraction managed, benefits mutual, nothing hidden underneath it. But we've barely touched the part that actually breaks relationships apart, which is what happens once that suspicion stops being hypothetical and something real actually crosses the line. Because if a completely made up, nothing happened friendship is enough to spike real jealousy on its own, what do you think happens the moment something real does cross it? Look, the 6% who say it's impossible aren't crazy. They're pointing at something real, but they're just aiming it at the wrong target, because it's not the friendship that breaks trust. It's what happens once someone crosses a line they were only ever managing before. Next time, we find out what that actually looks like. Subscribe so you don't miss it. See you there.